Welcome to the SolScript podcast. Here we explore how to unlock the power of our story. Our journey here on Earth can be one of deep passion, intentional creation, and personal transformation. The only thing holding us back is our stories. Come and join me as we rewrite and reignite. Hello, and welcome once again to the SolScript podcast. I am personally so glad that you're here, but I also think that you should be glad that you're here, that you chose in to a really beautiful and sacred work is essentially what we're doing today. The work of returning to yourself. And that, returning to yourself, is exactly our topic today. And I love to share stories with you. Of course, that's basically been this whole podcast. It's my own personal stories that I hope might give you some aha moments as they gave me aha moments and guidance and direction to, I believe, a more beautiful life. And today I am going to share once again with you another story, but this story is not necessarily my own story. It's not a story that I personally lived out, but I think it's a story that you'll find very familiar. So we're going to travel to the Polynesian Islands, where there's a young girl who has this love and this attraction to the ocean. But her father has a very strict rule that nobody journeys beyond the reef, a reef that is a protective barrier around their island. I'm assuming that this sounds familiar to you. If not, you likely haven't seen the movie of Moana, and if you haven't seen it, I highly suggest seeing it. But if you haven't seen it, that is totally okay. We're going to revisit it today and then relate it to this concept of transformation and returning to who you are, because the story so beautifully illustrates it more than I could ever illustrate it myself. So this begins right with this girl on the island. Her name is Moana. She has a love for the island, and this love for the island essentially was with her from the very beginning. It came with her innately when she was born, and she finds herself on the beach as a very young girl, hardly being able to even talk or walk. And as she's on this beach, the ocean comes to life, has this personality, and can interact with her. And she loves the ocean. They're immediate friends. It doesn't faze her that this ocean is essentially this living entity. And she plays with the ocean, and the ocean gives her this green stone. And this green stone is round and small and looks like an emerald. To me, it looks like an emerald. But she drops it back into the ocean because she's young. She doesn't know what it is. She drops it back into the ocean, walks away, and forgets about the experience. Now, Moana is the daughter of the village chief, and she is essentially in training to become the chief someday. And so her dad is trying as best as he can to push down this love of the ocean for her. Not even push it down, but like eradicate it completely. He has this belief that she will only be able to be a good leader as this belief is kind of washed from her, as this innate desire to be on the ocean no longer resides within her. And so we see this montage of Moana growing up, and she's kind of rebellious and is often running back to the ocean. But as Moana gets older, she starts to decide to do what her dad wants her to do and to be the person that he wants her to be. And you see her, sometimes looking back longingly at the ocean, but chooses to turn her head from it and continue to go on in her training to be the new chief. Her dad ultimately gets what he wants, and he sees that she's changed and that she's let go of this desire. And so he takes her to the top of the mountain. And there's a pile of stones there that previous chiefs had put on top of each other. And he says that sometime very soon, it'll be her opportunity to take this stone and pile it on top of the others, symbolic of them raising up the mountain and the village together. It's basically right after this conversation that there are things that come into their awareness that just aren't working anymore. There's the coconut trees that aren't producing like they're supposed to produce. When they're cracked open, they look kind of ashy and definitely not edible. And then also there's a huge lack of fish. The fishermen go out and in their traps, there's no fish there. So, being resourceful, Moana is looking for solutions. Well, have you tried the wayward side or the leeward side of the island? And they are like, yep, we've already tried that. There's no fish. So Moana's only conclusion, the obvious conclusion, is that we need to go beyond the reef. There's life and fish beyond the reef. There's a whole ocean of beautiful fish to supply our needs. And her dad, of course, is so upset that once again, she just wants to run back to the water. And he kind of reprimands her for this desire to go to the water. And he's disappointed because he can tell that desire still is there for her. Now, sorry, I just realized that my overalls, which I'm wearing today, are making some noise. So if you notice clacking or anything, it's just my overalls. I apologize for it. But if you hear it, you'll know what it is. So Moana just got reprimanded from her dad and she is angry, but she has this belief that there is fish beyond the reef. So she decides to take a canoe out beyond the reef to prove her dad right. But here's the deal. She has never learned to sail beyond the reef because nobody's allowed to go beyond the reef. So she finds herself caught up in the wave and she gets herself in trouble. She almost dies. And we also find out that the reason why Moana's dad is so adamant that nobody goes beyond the reef is because he himself ventured beyond the reef with his friend, and he lost his friend. His friend died. So he, of course, naturally decides that going beyond the reef is not safe. And Moana comes to that same conclusion as she ends up on the beach just gasping for life. Her grandmother is there and she tells her grandmother, he was right. There's nothing beyond the reef. I just need to go and put my stone on the mountain and I need to stay right here where I am. And I love her grandmother's reaction because she's like, okay then, off you go. And I think this totally catches Moana off guard because she's expecting her grandma to kind of talk her out of it because her grandmother is the village crazy lady. You can see her throughout the entire montage, the beginning of this film, by the ocean. And she's dancing and she's seemingly one with the ocean. She's one with nature. And she says that she wants to come back and be reincarnated as a huge manta ray. So she obviously does not have a fear of the ocean. So she's expecting her grandmother to talk her out of it. And she kind of turns around. Moana turns around and she says, if there's something you want to tell me, just tell me. And then she asks, is there something you want to tell me? And her grandmother pauses and says, is there something you want to hear? And at that moment when Moana is finally open to hearing, the water comes back to life, just as it did when she was a young girl. And she looks at the ocean and she says, I thought it was a dream. And the ocean wave comes and splashes on her and her grandma's like, nope, it is not a dream. Clearly it is real. And Moana is then once again given this stone, given this green stone. And The movie continues where her grandmother shows her heritage, Moana's heritage and ancestry, through showing her a cave that is full of boats. Huge canoes is what Moana calls them. And she boards one of these canoes, and you find out their heritage as wayfinders, as warriors, as discoverers, as explorers. And she is so psyched about this. She learns that her ancestors found Motunui, loved it there, but didn't just stay there. They still sent out warriors and explorers to go and map the ocean and explore farther. But the thing is that eventually they stopped sending people out because Maui, a demigod, steals the heart of the goddess of creation. She's half goddess, half island, this green, lush, beautiful island. And Maui steals this heart of this goddess, and in doing so releases the wrath of Taka. And Taka is this lava monster who sends out this curse which destroys island after island. And it's the same destruction that the island of Motunui is starting to experience. So the little green stone that the ocean gave her is in fact the heart of Te Fiti. And she learns that there was a prophecy of a chosen one, somebody who would be chosen to take the heart of Te Fiti, find Maui, and take him to return the heart back to Te Fiti. And the ocean chose Moana for that. The ocean gave Moana a call to go and save her people by returning the heart of Te Fiti. Well, as you can imagine, Moana is psyched about this information, and she ends up bursting her way into a village meeting where they are discussing the future of Motunui and what they were going to do about this curse that was coming upon them. And she bursts in and she says, "We were warriors! We were warriors!" And she tells the entire audience, everybody in the room, about their heritage and ancestry. And once again, her dad is fuming mad. So he marches out of the tent and picks up this tiki torch, a staff that's lit on fire, and he says, "I should have burnt those boats a long time ago." And Moana is surprised as she learns that her dad knew the history, knew that they were voyagers and warriors, and that they explored and once lived on the ocean. He knew, but because of his experience, he decided that they no longer should do that, and that he would deny the people from knowing who they were in order to protect them. Well, as her dad is marching off to burn the boats, his mother and Moana's grandmother falls ill, and they run back to her bedside. And while she is there, Moana is there by her grandmother's bedside. She whispers, "Go, go," because she knows that this is the time that Moana has to go and fulfill her calling that she was chosen by the ocean to do. So Moana leaves the island of Motunui, boards one of the big canoes in the cave, and sets off to find Maui, to take him across the ocean and return the heart of Te Fiti. Well, we get to watch her go on this journey of crossing the ocean and trying to learn how to wayfind and sail, which, once again, she's never learned to do because she's never been allowed to do it. And so she struggles to go across the ocean and find Maui, and eventually the ocean helps her find Maui. And Maui does not want to do this. He tells Moana that the ocean chose wrong, that she's small and weak and feeble. Why would the ocean choose her? And they have to fight monsters and have all of these, of course, adventures as they cross the ocean. And eventually, Maui is convinced, rather forcefully, to go and return the heart of Te Fiti. So they make it to Taka, and they have to pass Taka in order to make it to the island of Te Fiti. And they attempt to do this. And in doing so, Maui has his fishhook. This fishhook that gives him magical powers. This fishhook gets hit by Taka, and part of it gets ruined, gets damaged. And ultimately, Taka defeats them. So they're out in the middle of nowhere on their boat, defeated, their sail ripped, unsure how to move forward. And Maui is so scared of his hook being destroyed because he identifies himself with this hook and with this power that he decides to leave Moana. So Moana, before Maui leaves, she recites this declaration that she's recited multiple times throughout the movie. She says, "I am Moana of Motunui. You will board my boat, sail across the sea, and return the heart of Te Fiti." And she says, "The ocean chose me." And Maui says, "Well, the ocean chose wrong." And he flies off because he can turn into a giant hawk with his magic powers. Just thought I'd clarify how Maui flew off. At this point, Moana reaches her ultimate low. She begins to question if she really was the one that was meant to do this. And the ocean comes to life again, and she says, "Choose someone else." And she gives back the heart to the ocean and decides that she's done. At this point, Moana's grandmother, the spirit of Moana's grandmother, comes and is there to support her. And I love it because she is there to support her no matter what Moana chooses. If Moana wants to go back and return the heart of Te Fiti, or if she wants to go back to the island of Motunui, she is there, and she will guide her and be with her no matter what her choice is. So Moana goes over, deciding to go back to Motunui, and places her paddle into the ocean, but hesitates. And her grandma asks, "Why do you hesitate?" And even then, in that moment, Moana didn't know why she hesitated. And her grandma starts to sing to her one of my favorite songs of the entire movie. She says, "And nothing on earth can silence the quiet voice still inside you. And when that voice starts to whisper, Moana, you've come so far. Moana, listen, do you know who you are?" And then Moana says, "Who am I?" She asks the question, "Who am I?" And then she starts to proclaim who she is, where she came from, and the love of her ocean and the call that it has given her. And she ends the song with this beautiful note of singing, "I am Moana." And she says it with passion and understanding of who she is. It's not just I am Moana. It is, I am Moana. And she feels it with every fiber of her being. And she decides to fulfill her call and return the heart of Te Fiti. So she returns over to Taka and is fighting Taka. And of course, last minute, just in time, Maui decides to come and he saves her. And Moana is able to make it to the spot where Te Fiti is, at least where Te Fiti should be, but finds this empty space. Then Moana turns around and she realizes who Taka is. Taka is in fact Te Fiti that had changed into this giant evil lava monster after her heart had been taken from her. So Moana calls out to Taka, and Taka comes over to her and she says, "This is not who you are. I know who you are." And then Taka and Moana give each other what I call a head bunk, where they touch foreheads and they see each other soul to soul, heart to heart. And Moana places the heart of Te Fiti into the chest of Taka, and Taka dissolves away into the goddess of creation, into Te Fiti. Now, my friends, this is not just Moana's story. This is my story, and it is your story, and it is everybody's story, because in fact, we have forgotten who we are at our core. It probably strikes a chord with you as you watch Moana and Maui and Taka remember who they are and go through this transformation, because it is a longing inside all of us, whether it's conscious or unconscious, to remember who we are. And that is the catalyst for real transformation. When we remember who we are, everything changes. You change the way that you look at the world and perceive everything around you, the way that you see your children, the way that you see strangers changes. And it's a really beautiful experience. It's one that there was a big aha for me. Obviously, this was a huge journey and it didn't happen overnight, but there was a moment where I had clarity, a clarity that I never even thought that I could ever have. I didn't know existed. I didn't know that I could have a real understanding of who I was. And I think there's probably more that I am going to learn and understand. This isn't the end of my understanding of who I am, but it was to a degree that I haven't experienced before. But this experience was so sacred that I don't even think I can put it into words, but it's something that I hope you can experience at some point, because it is transformational and it does change everything. But with that said, I want to address that. Let's say you've had this experience. Let's say you know who you are and you can sing it out. You can sing, "I am Moana," and feel it with every fiber of your being. And it does change everything. It doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect. And it doesn't mean that you don't still have to work. Moana had her call. She remembered who she was, but yet she still had to cross the oceans. She still had to live life. She still had to learn how to wayfind. She had to convince Maui and go through his ridicule of him saying that she was weak and that she wasn't suited for this job, and questioning, yeah, did the ocean really choose you? You don't seem like the kind of person that the ocean would choose. You're just like a little girl, right? She still had to face all of these things, even though she knew who she was. And she even got to a point where she was so defeated that she told the ocean to choose somebody else. In that moment, she asked to forget. She was willing to release the call, release this information that she had gathered about her identity, and go back to how she was before. And that is something that I have faced even within the very moment when I had an understanding of who I was. It was this beautiful, glorious, like, holy cow, I know who I am. And a second later, I begged and I pleaded to forget who I was. I literally told God, I don't want to remember. I don't want to remember. I don't want to remember who I am. And it is because when you have a knowledge of who you are, the power is so great that it cannot be contained within yourself, within the identity that you had perceived before. And let's be honest, it's so much easier to stay on the island and to have this little happy world that's protected by a reef, and you think that you have everything that you need. And when that shatters, when you realize your power is an ocean big and it cannot be contained within the self that you have created through conditioning, you don't want it. You want to stay comfortable, you want to stay familiar, and you will ask to forget. And I think all around us is this world that is reminding us constantly who we are. There are stories created like Moana, but then as well, the trees remind us of who we are. The creations all around us remind us of who we are. Religions attempt to remind us of who we are. But we always are choosing to forget. We're choosing not to see. And we do this consciously and unconsciously because it is easier to forget. And you have to consistently remind yourself of who you are and choose in every time. The other thing is that when you remember who you are probably going to be called the village crazy lady. And you're going to be told that you drift too far because nobody else has this information. Not nobody, but the vast majority of people choose to forget who they are, and they don't know. They have no idea the feeling that you feel, the unity that you feel with the earth and with people and with love all around you. They've never experienced it before, and so they call you the crazy lady. And that sometimes is really hard to swallow as well. And so that's yet again another reason why we will forget and choose to forget who we are. Remember that it's okay to be the village crazy lady, but that probably is going to be a journey of healing to be able to come into a place where you're okay being the village crazy lady. Another thing I want us to remember is that people create these conditions out of love. These conditions and rules or, restrictions are put there because of people's past experiences where they have felt fear and where they have felt pain. And you see this all the time with generations. You're like, well, my grandmother had this, and so now these are kind of the rules of our family. And it's really hard for them to see that it's okay and that it is safe. But not only that, you're not guaranteed safety anywhere. Now let's bring this back to like planet Earth, because I know that these ideas are vast and expansive and kind of maybe scary to talk about. So I'm going to bring it back down to planet Earth. And we're going to talk about maybe some ways that you can work towards a remembrance of who you are. And there's really no clear-cut pathway, at least that I've found. I think everybody kind of goes on their own journey, and your path to remembrance is going to be specific to you and the experiences that you have had. But I do have some suggestions that can get you started on your journey towards a remembrance. And the very first one is, like all creations and manifestations, we have to start with awareness and intention. We can't move anywhere if we don't even know that we have some place to move towards or something to understand. So we have to be aware. And during this entire conversation, hopefully you have had an awareness that this could be a possibility for you. You already checked off the first step. Congratulations. Pat yourself on the back. Now, the second step is intention, right? The second suggestion, I should say. Because like I said, I don't think this is step by step, but I think that intention can be really powerful, as we've talked about before on this podcast many times. So how do we set an intention? It is very simple, actually. Wherever you are, if you're in your car, at your desk, doing laundry, whatever it may be, take a deep breath. And maybe take another one. and say, I choose now to start a journey of remembering who I am. It's as simple as that. But here's the part that's not so simple, is that as you set that intention, what you are essentially doing is calling experiences to help you to remember who you are. And some of these experiences are joyous and beautiful and easy. And some of these experiences are hard and they are there to help you see and uncover who you are and what you are not. And a lot of times we don't want to see what we're not, and we don't want to see who we are. It's very difficult. And so we have to go through experiences where we're pushed to the point of surrender, where we're pushed to the point where you no longer can hold on to the old ways. You have to throw them in the toilet, and you are allowing yourself to see something new. So look out for these experiences once you set this intention. Trust that everything coming into your life is helping and assisting you in seeing who you really are. So it's great to have this knowledge and to have this intention, because when you're in the thick of it, when these experiences are coming and you're just like, why am I going through this? This is awful. I hate this. Take a step back. Bring awareness back into your life of what you are experiencing and say, what am I learning from this experience? What is this experience showing me about who I really am? What am I being asked to remember? I'd also say, give yourself an affirmation that's going to help you return back to center in those moments after you have that, oh yeah, that's right, I asked for this. What is your affirmation going to be? A suggestion of an affirmation could be, I have chosen to return to my own heart and remember who I am. I have chosen to return to my own heart and remember who I am. Just like Moana on that boat multiple times in the movie had to proclaim her mission and her calling. Do it for yourself as well. Come up with an affirmation right here and right now. You can pause this audio and decide what it is that you're going to say. And my final suggestion for this journey is, of course, sung by Moana. It says, and the call isn't out there at all. It's inside of me. It's like the tide always falling and rising. I will carry you here in my heart. You'll remind me that come what may, I know the way. I am Moana. The answers lie within you. Your divinity is within you. The kingdom of God is within. I don't know how to say it anymore. You already have all of the answers within you. You don't need to look externally. All we need to do is return back to our heart. Because when we ignore our heart, we turn into ugly lava monsters. Return to your heart and you will find a goddess or a god of creation. Now, to finish up this episode, I would love to do a little guided meditation with you. It is a Moana themed guided meditation. So if you're driving, you're welcome to do this while you're driving, but I would recommend maybe pausing it and doing this guided meditation when you can take the opportunity to be by yourself and close your eyes and really visualize what's coming to you, because it is that visual or that knowing that is going to give you the answers to the questions that we're going to ask during this guided meditation. So pause it if you need to. Let's go ahead and move in to our guided meditation. You wake up lying on a beach, although your eyes remain closed because the sun is so bright. But you can feel the sand beneath your body. You can feel the sand in your hands and you pick it up and you let it run through your fingers. And you feel the sand in between your toes and you dig them in a little deeper. And you can hear the ocean waves, an ebb and a flow, a rising and a falling. And your chest and your breath begins to rise and fall along with the waves. You start to hear sounds of the water, but this sound is different than the rising and the falling of the waves. So you open your eyes, and what you see is that the water has come to life. And this water takes the form of somebody that you love and trust dearly. You walk towards this living water and notice that it has something in its hand, and it's holding it out for you to take. You hold your hand out and feel a splash of water in your hand, but you're left with something familiar but has long been forgotten. You hold this object close to your heart, and as you do, the remembrance of what you came here to do comes back to you. You feel this remembrance and this calling so strongly that you know what you need to do, and you see it now. In order to fulfill your call, you have to leave your friends and family, and you board a canoe that had been resting along the beach the entire time. You sail through the ocean for what seems to be an eternity until you find an island. You explore this island. You take time to see all of the rocks and the trees and its beauty. You eat the fresh fruit and you nurture your body from such a long journey. Your hands are raw, your skin is sunburned, your lips chapped, and your clothes tattered. Through your explorations, you find a cave. And above the cave entrance is an inscription. All who enter here shall never return. You clearly should not enter this cave, but something keeps pulling you to it. And ultimately you decide to take a step into the cave. With each step you take, the light from the outside fades, but despite your fear of the darkness, there is something that keeps pulling you deeper and deeper into the cave. You see a light, and you follow it, coming into a large cavern with the most beautiful stalactites and stalagmites. You look around and you marvel at the shape of the cave and the natural crystals growing from the walls and the ceiling and the floor. Then you suddenly notice a large and ancient-looking mirror in the center of the room, and you wonder how you could have missed it before. You walk up to the mirror, and you see your reflection, but something is different about it. You see your eyes, and you see your nose, and all the same basic features are there, but the longer you look, the more differences you see. You notice your clothes. You notice your hands. You see your skin and your hair. And you finally look yourself straight in the eyes. Confused at the reflection you're looking at, you ask, "Who are you?" You suddenly gasp as you look at yourself properly for the very first time. You spend some time looking at yourself in the mirror because you don't want to leave behind this reflection of yourself. You're beautiful, you're vibrant, and you're just so you. You place your hand on the mirror, longing to be a part and one with that reflection. And you look down at yourself and see that you already are. After a time, you decide to leave the cave and continue on your journey to answer the call you were given. You walk out of the cave and turn to take one last look, noticing the inscription above the entryway. "All who enter here shall never return." And you laugh, knowing that who you entered the cave as will in fact never return.